You might have seen that I featured this game in the Puzzle of the Week. It's become known as the Polish Immortal, and I'd like to show you the whole game in this video. It's absolutely stunning. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. Let me know, have you ever played something as brilliant as this? And do consider supporting the channel via PayPal or patreon.com. Check out the rewards. So here we go. Gluecksberg against Najdorf. Miguel Najdorf. Well, at that time he was known as Moshe Najdorf, born in Poland in 1910. If you don't know his full extraordinary life story, then, well, just Google him. Basically, in 1939, he was playing for Poland in the Chess Olympiad held in Buenos Aires. And of course, Second World War broke out. And, well, he was Jewish and decided to stay in Argentina and became an Argentinian citizen. His family was wiped out in the Holocaust. I mean, it's an absolutely tragic story. But this game was played early on in Najdorf's career. Of course, I'm sure you'll know the name Najdorf just because of the Najdorf variation, the Sicilian, but there was much more to him than that. He was one of the best players in the world in, well, post-war, actually. So let's take a look at this. D4. I should say this game was played in Warsaw, probably in 1930, but no one is quite sure of the details of this game, actually. Gluecksberg against Najdorf. So it's a Dutch. And Najdorf actually quickly goes into the so-called Stonewall variation with D5. I mean, personally, I always feel that when White plays the knight out C3 at an early stage, then pinning makes a lot of sense, actually. But Najdorf was obviously intent on playing the Stonewall variation. And here, the thing is, I think bishop f4 is a good move, just to clamp that e5 square. But White played pawn to e3, which is, it's still okay actually. C6, so Najdorf sets up this Stonewall position. Bishop d3 and bishop d6, so the most aggressive place for the bishop, looking down at the king side, but covering the e5 square as well. And castles, castles. Now, how would you play this position with White? I think the move that White plays here, I don't like very much at all. I think there's a much better way to play the position. Basically, you know, White has to watch out for this bishop and the knight coming in here. Can start a strong attack. So actually, if you want to take a belt and braces approach to the position, you can play knight e5, and after this, you can just play f4. And, well, it's a almost symmetrical pawn position, but if anyone's better here, surely it's going to be White with a slight space advantage because of this. I think that's a very sensible way for White to play. But knight e2 played. I think that's a bit unnecessary. Knight d7, good move, covers the e5 square. And now, well, White makes a terrible blunder. I can imagine this was a casual game, basically. But no one knows the exact details of the game, that's the thing. It seems to me that knight f4 is stronger, or simply just b3 and bishop b2. But knight g5 played. Well, it's a basic error. Bishop takes, pawn check. And if king takes, then knight g4 check. And when the king steps back, queen takes knight. Simply wins a pawn, and black is very active there. So after bishop takes pawn check, White played king h1. Well, it's not really an improvement, but just see how Najdorf exploits this. It is sensational. So knight g4, threatening the knight. And the knight could retreat to h3. It's probably a stronger move, but in any case, black is just a pawn up. Pawn to f4. Yeah, I mean, I should mention that, of course, if knight takes pawn, then the queen lands on h4, which looks already pretty catastrophic. So pawn to f4. And the queen heads for the h file anyway, wanting to come here. And white decides, okay, I've got to get the king out, otherwise queen h5 could just be the end. So g3, queen h5, threatening a big discovered check here with bishop g3, so king g2. Now, what would you play if you had the black pieces in this position? Black to play. It's more than one decent continuation. The one that Najdorf selected is spectacular, but one can play it in a more straightforward way. So if you want to play in a straightforward way, how about trying to get that bishop to this diagonal? So one could simply take here and play knight here. Now, if this is taken, then that's just going to open up the e-file. I mean, that looks tremendous. And if, let's say, rook h1, then b5, again, if white takes here, that just opens the e-file. And if bishop b3, c5, and the bishop reaches the long diagonal. It looks tremendous for black. So that's one way. Pretty straightforward, just open up the center. But Najdorf played bishop g1. Ooh, interesting. So if rook takes, then queen h2 check and queen f2 mate. Okay, that's clear. So knight takes g1, queen check, and king f3. Right, so black is a piece down. The king, or at least on a superficial level, looks reasonably secure. So how does black join things up here? Well, here is where some brilliance comes. e5. This is fantastic. Now, white took that pawn. Let's just have a look. What about if we just, okay, random move, bishop d2. Well, in this case, we play e4 check. Knight takes. Now, there are two ways to finish off, but the one that I think is the most elegant is knight e5 check. If f pawn takes, then that is double discovered checkmate. And if d takes, we play pawn takes knight and knight e5 mate. Absolutely fantastic. So that's, well, one of the threats at any rate. So white played pawn takes pawn. And now, are you ready? It's just a cascade of sacrifices now. Knight takes pawn check, which drags the king up the board. Knight g6 check, the king has to go back. Okay, so now black is two pieces down. What next? Well, this is a classic Dutch move and a Grand Prix attack move as well. So often, if you want to get things going in the Dutch, you have to advance that f-pawn. Opening up this file and opening up this diagonal. This is classic attacking play. Okay, what's the big deal? Pawn takes pawn played. Okay, now you might have seen the puzzle of the week, so this finish won't be a surprise. But if you haven't, have a go. It is black to play and checkmate. Or near enough checkmate anyway. Bishop g4 check. Of course, the king can step to the side, but we just take the queen. And, well, it's going to be mate pretty soon with these two rooks in the game and the queen checking here after the rook takes. And it must be winning for black. Well, obviously it's winning, but it's going to be mate soon as well. So bishop check. In the game, king takes bishop. Now knight e5 check stops the king stepping back, so that knight has to be taken. And now h5 is checkmate. Absolutely wonderful. That has become known as the Polish Immortal. Well, Najdorf had an extraordinary career, an extraordinary life. I was privileged to have met him on a few occasions where, towards the end of his life, where he was spectating the World Championship matches, for example, in New York. And he was always so well dressed, so well turned out, very dapper, and always had strong opinions, had a good sense of humour. Great man, really a great man, and a brilliant player. Was very successful in his chess career, but was also very successful as a businessman after he restarted his life in Argentina after World War II in the most tragic circumstances. So there we go. Miguel Najdorf and the Polish Immortal.